Are we ready? We're ready. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this webinar, and thank you for joining us. About 2 weeks ago, Shanterra and I'm Rosalind, Shanterra and I sat down to write an article because we were seeing so many things on social media and in articles about how to be a white ally and how Black people were responding to that. And so we thought about writing an article. And then People, Cultures of Dignity said to both of us, you all like speak for a living, and why don't you do it as a webinar? And so we thought, okay, why not? And Shanterra and I have been having basically the conversation that we're gonna let you in on for 20 years. And we had no idea what the response was going to be. The response has been phenomenal. We have almost 1,000 people registered for this webinar. So we know we're not alone. And I also just want to really just give you all some kind of understanding of who's here on the webinar with us. We have people from really all over the world. We have people from private, public, and charter schools and international schools. We have people on military bases. We have people from corporations, huge corporations, to small businesses. We have people from churches. We have people from state, local, and federal governments, and again, around the world. So thank you so much for being here. Our goal today is to leave you with concrete skills that you can apply in your life to really difficult, uncomfortable, like terrible situations, but things that you can actually apply and that you feel like this was a good use of your time, and that you are reaffirmed that relationships are what matters. Relationships between people matter, and even the only way we're going to get through what we're going through is to be able to have hard conversations with each other. And so with that in mind, and with that as our introduction to the overall webinar, it is my absolute pleasure and honor to introduce my extremely close friend and colleague, Shanterra McBride.
Hello, everyone. Okay, I'm taking a deep breath because I just can't, we're finally here. But so my name is Shanterra McBride. I'm the founder of a social enterprise called Marvelous University, where we inspire young people to be more than what's expected, more than what's required, and more than what's modeled. I'm also a speaker, a teacher, a preacher, a parent partner, and I get to travel the world and really partner with adults who like young people and like working with young people. And I'm also the proud aunt to the most perfect person on the planet, Olivia. So that is who I am. And I have known Ross for, gosh, we met in 1998. Oh my. So I've known her for a very long time. So there are some things that I could tell you. And if you want, you can email me later and I'll give you the goods. But for right now, I think it's best that she tell you who she is.
Thank you, Shanterra. So I'm the co-founder with Charlie Kuhn of Cultures of Dignity. We are an organization that works to support the well-being of communities and to listen to young people and to work in collaboration with parents and with teachers, educators, and everybody who works with young people to be able to strengthen our communities based on the principle of dignity. And I write articles and write books and things like that, but really for the purposes of this webinar, what's so important to me is that we are in conversation, and my work has really been about listening to people and being able to then transfer that information and respect their experiences and then share that with other people so that we can strengthen our communities. And so here's housekeeping of how we're going to run this. I hope maybe you can tell this already, that this is going to be a conversation, and you can ask questions throughout, and at about 40 minutes past the hour, we're going to begin answering people's questions, although we've already been getting questions from people even before this webinar started, and that informed the way that we prepared our conversation today. If you have questions, you're going to use the Q&A button at the bottom right of your screen where it says like ask a question, and you're going to be able to see other people's questions, and you're going to be able to upvote questions if you like it and you think, hey, pay attention to this particular question, this is really important to me, I can relate to this question, upvote it. At the end of it, at the conclusion, of course, we're going to record the webinar, and we're going to be sending out a free resource for you afterwards for your continued learning. And that's my intro. That's my housekeeping.
You did so good. So listen, before we get into the good of this conversation, I thought it was important, and Ross agreed with me, that we acknowledge and honor the fact that you showed up, right? So like you woke up this morning and was like, oh, I had that hard conversation about how to be an ally later on today, and you still logged in and you showed up and you're here. And I think it is important to recognize and honor your intention. I think it's important to not take it for granted or brush it off or move too quickly past it, but that we are purposeful, that we are here on purpose, that we have chosen to be here. And so I know for me, the past few months have been just a lot. And we'll get into that, but I just wanted to see if we can just take a deep breath, if we can just be thankful and recognize that we are here on purpose, that this is not an accident, and that we are here to learn from one another. We're here to listen to one another. And most of all, I really think the fact that people are from all over the world, when I think about that, when I think about just the positive energy that is going out, and I know for some people that word's like, ooh, what? Trust me, it is a thing. And it's so the fact that this good energy is going out around the world right now, I believe relationships heal the world. And so we believe that our relationship will help heal the world and move us forward. So I just wanted to take a moment and recognize that we are here on purpose, and I can't wait to see what great things we are getting ready to do.
Are we taking a moment? Are we taking a breath?
I just, let's take a breath. Just inhale and exhale.
This is also so we don't talk so fast.
Oh yeah, especially me.
Okay.
I mean, I have a post-it right here that says slow down, and in about 5 minutes it's gonna blow away because of the ceiling fan.
Okay, so and me too with speaking too quickly.
That's what we do. So, yeah.
Our first action to be able to talk about any of these things, and we hope that you apply this as well, is to set some norms and to base those norms on principles and how we are going to talk about difficult topics. And there is a tendency, and Shanterra and I have been doing this work in all different kinds of ways, from racism, sexism, homophobia, different kinds of discrimination and bigotry, that there was a tendency to rush into it or to try and fix the problem, and without setting the norms based on principles first. And so we're going to share with you what are the principles and the norms, the ways in which we're going to structure, the way in which we talk to each other, and the way in which we're interacting with you, and also the way in which we've thought about you in our preparation for this webinar. What are the norms that we think about? And so for us, of course, dignity, the inherent worth of every person everywhere, is absolutely inalienable. It is just what is. It is just worth. People have worth. It is our guiding principle that drives our actions and our reactions to each other. Our other principle at Cultures of Dignity is that we are easy on people and hard on ideas. And we live in a world that, and I think this has been true for quite a while, but we can see it so clearly now, is that we are really hard on people and we are really easy on ideas. Mm-hmm. And we want to switch that. We want to flip that during this webinar. And just as a concept for you all is to be easy on people and really rigorous and hard on ideas. And we anticipate that Shanterra and I might say things that you really disagree with. And that is okay. It is okay to be uncomfortable when dignity is your principle and you're easy on people and hard on ideas. The other definition that we have is that listening is being prepared to be changed by what you hear. And so that's also what we think about a lot when we're thinking about these kinds of difficult topics, that this is really, really critical to think about. And I just also, before, I want to drill down a little bit more on this dignity piece. And again, it's something to think about for this webinar and then afterwards, which is that we are going to make a very clear distinction between dignity and respect. And so dignity, as I said, is the worth of people, but respect differently is about how that you admire someone's actions. It is actually separate from the respect that we show a position, somebody's position, like being a politician or being a parent or being a police officer or being a teacher. And so being a coach, being a person who's a church leader. So I want you to think about this. And when you're listening to this, like close your eyes, and I want you to think about somebody that, especially when you were young, that you respected. So just imagine that person. And now what I want you to think about is you didn't respect that person because of their position, how much money they had, the success that they had. You respected them because of the way they treated people. And the way they treated people was that they were treating people with dignity. And now I want you to think about somebody that you don't respect now or when you were young. And what we think is that it's probable that the reason that you don't respect that person, again, regardless of their position, their success, their authority, that the reason that you don't respect them is because they don't treat people with dignity. And so what we're going to challenge you about in this webinar is that we can separate people's actions from their inherent worth. And so if you are interacting with somebody who's doing something and acting in ways and saying things that fundamentally you are opposed to and you get very upset about, and they might especially be in a position of authority, like in your family, you've been raised to respect your parents, you've been raised to respect people in positions of authority, that you don't feel that you can speak out because it's disrespectful. And what we're saying is that you treat that person with worth always, but that you don't have to respect somebody whose actions are showing you that they are not treating people with dignity. And then the last part of this is that what also about respect, especially in the United States culture, is that respect is often about a performance of power. That you are showing someone respect is really about the fact that you have to show someone respect regardless of how they treat you. And that is one of the ways in which people are so angry today, and they are rightfully angry. And it is something that we deal with at Cultures of Dignity often with young people who are interfacing with adults who are not treating them with dignity, but then demand their respect and obedience and compliance. So that for us is one of the things we want you to take as a concept as we move forward into the more specific questions we're going to ask about or talk about. Shanterra, anything to add?
No, my head is about to fall off because I'm just like, yes, like I'm agreeing with you. And I mean, I felt in the middle of that, and I even knew where you were going, but I felt even in the middle of that wanting to argue. But what if, but just because, and I knew, but it's that idea of just because you're in a position of power and I've been taught to respect you, whatever, if you are mistreating me, if I am not being treated with dignity, I can speak up, I can say something, and I still get to treat you with dignity. Dignity is non-negotiable.
Yep.
And I think what we're seeing, especially with the past few weeks, is that dignity has gone out the window. That people are just, it's the respect word is being thrown around a lot under the umbrella of power, and dignity is nowhere to be found.
Right. So this is really about reclaiming all of our dignity. So
yeah,
that's what we're here for.
Well, and to your point, I was thinking about, y'all, Ross and I have worked together, like I said, for years, right? And we have been in trainings where I'm presenting and dignity has gone out the window, where somebody will question my credibility or question what I say or question what I have on, like just this outright questioning of my existence. And I at times will look at Ross and we would have that eye conversation, like, you gonna say something?
This.
Yeah, because I'm trying not, I know we have a contract and I really want us to finish, but and so I point that out because we have had the hard conversations. This is not something we just decided, oh, racism is showing itself again in America, so let's write something. No, we have worked together, and in the midst of working together, behaviors will show up that are clearly not treating me with dignity. And we would talk about it afterwards, and it would be even this discussion like, well, I would say to Ross, well, I think that person is racist. And I mean, do you really think it was? Yeah, so that conversation is what we've had for 20 years. Why do I say that? I think it's important that we are honest with you about how we talk to one another, that we are honest with you with how we listen to one another, that we are honest with you about the long struggle that it's been at really great schools, at really great companies, at really great organizations, in families. Like, we wanted to be honest with you about that, but then to also model what it means to be an ally. And I think for most of us, ally is a word that we just know. We know the meaning of it. We know, or at least we think we know what it means. And so to be on the same page today, we wanted to have a working definition of what an ally is. And I remember many times 3 years ago when I was in my first year as a sociology major, and I remember taking a class called Intro to Race and Ethnicity. And one of the first terms we learned was ally. And often ally is defined as a noun. It is a person who uses their privilege to advocate on behalf of someone else who doesn't hold the same privilege. That sounds so sweet. And with so much talk being geared towards non-Black people and really white people on being allies, we wanted to make sure that you understand that being an ally is more than being sympathetic. It's more than just believing in equality. That being an ally means being willing to act with and for others in pursuit of ending oppression and creating equality. In other words, being an ally is a verb. It's not something that's done on the side. It is an action. And we wanted to make sure that we are present with the same understanding of what an ally is, so that we can continue to move the needle forward. And so we're just going to jump in. So Ross.
Yes, ma'am.
Why do you think it is so hard to have conversations about race and privilege? And just to be really, really specific today, why do you think it's so hard for white people to have conversations about race and privilege?
Well, actually, before I answer that question, I want to go back to a thing that you said that shows a mistake that I made.
Just coming out the gate with, okay.
Because the moment when we would do trainings and you would give me that look, and I would have a moment, because I remember there was many moments, but I remember many times when this happened, and it often, you were right, like it's in schools, for example, where, you know, they have diversity days and they have this, that, and all that stuff, and there would be a white teacher or administrator or whatever that would look at you and do these very subtle little things to you that were really undermining.
Microaggressions. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and they were, the moment I want to just highlight, because I think it's something that people do regardless of race, but actually is really relevant here about race, is that, you know, I would look at you, we would do that thing, you would look at me like, are you kidding me with this? I would look at you, I'd be like, all right, we'll deal with that later, right? That whole I thing was happening, but afterwards to have a conversation, and you said, and you're right, I did do this, I would say, are you sure? And I have to say that I have said, never say that. When I've been doing parenting, you know, as a teacher, when a young person comes to you and says, this is a problem I'm having, a teacher should never, ever say to another person who is talking about or revealing a problem they're having with another person, are you sure? Are you sure they meant it that way? Because the response, of course, from that, when it's a child, is like, okay, I'm not going to talk to that teacher again because they're not listening to me, and they're not believing me. Right. And that's exactly what's happening, even with two people that know each other really well, is me saying to you, are you sure, comes across as like, come on, like, are you like, and so that undermines you, and it undermines your experience. And so I just want to say to the people who are white, who are listening to this right now, that we should never say to a person in that situation, are you sure? Or do you think you're doing, you know, you're making too much out of this? Or like, why do you think it's racism? Like with that kind of tone in your voice. Right. In the moment when they tell you is not the moment like to be saying that. It is the moment that we need to be listening and just saying affirmation of like, wow, because let's just take a moment back of like, who has more experience between Shanterra and I? Who has more experience recognizing racism? Shanterra or me? And so when Shanterra says that to me, my responsibility in that moment is not to question it. It is, even if it is just to slow myself down and say, okay, let's talk about it. And, you know, and also the other part is, if we make a mistake like that, we can always go back. You can always go back to somebody, even if you don't know them that well, but you've made that mistake, and say, hey, you know what? I did this thing. I said, you know, I questioned you and I apologize for that. I should have listened.
Yeah.
That's a moment. I mean, Shanterra, tell me if I'm wrong, where.
No, I would have stopped you already, but that is, yes.
Right. Like, you can go back and repair it. They're not going to think you're this horrible person forever if you go back. If you don't go back, they're going to think that you're really irritating. Is that fair?
Yeah. It's fair. And I'm so glad you said it, because it is one of those things where, if I'm working with you and if I have lived experience, and if I have grown up to recognize racism when I see it, and when someone, especially in a position of privilege, makes me question me, then not only do I sit for a second to question me, because I also know I'm right, but I question me, but then it makes me question the person of privilege. Right. And so then this wall starts to get built, and I'm like, I shared my truth, and they questioned, you know, and I say that because the smallest amount, just like with young people, the smallest amount of doubt, the smallest amount of disbeliefs makes a young person clam up. That's when you hear, never mind. That's when you hear, oh, it's okay. And then it takes years maybe for them to share with you something else. The same thing happens with adults when it's dealing with power, privilege, race, and racism. It's the same thing. So if you're an ally, and when someone, especially as a person of color, says to you, as a Black person says to you, yo, that person, I don't trust them. I would say, I remember saying to Ross, don't leave me in a conversation with them. Like, I will say, I don't trust that person. I don't trust their actions. I don't trust the words that they have said. Do not let me be alone. In other words, I didn't want that person to catch me in a corner.
Right. Now, I also don't need to like rescue you. What you're asking me for is just to be there with you to support. I don't need to be like speaking for you or doing, you know, you are more than capable, obviously, of handling it. And so this hero thing that white people need to like, or these like grand gestures that we tend to want to do, we absolutely should not be doing at all. First of all, it's embarrassing. Second is we are taking away agency from the people that actually have had the experience. So we are not fixing anything when we do that. We're just reinforcing the whole dynamic. So when a person like, you know, in Shanterra's situation says, I need you to stand by me, that's literally what they're doing. They're not asking you to like speak their words for them. And it's uncomfortable, right? It's uncomfortable, and it's okay. It's okay to be uncomfortable, and it's okay to make the mistake. It's okay when we say things that we don't mean, or we do mean, but we don't know that we do because we don't know where the words come from. We can that wall that Shanterra's talking about, my experience consistently has been that when I make mistakes, not just with Shanterra, I make mistakes, lots of people, lots of times, that on race issues and all different kinds of things, that when I say, oh, that's not good, like when I think about that and then I repair it, my experience is that people, because they see that it's authentic and genuine, that actually builds trust. Like, oh, we now are in a relationship. Yeah. So now, should we move on to our first question?
I mean, we can. I mean, because I really want us, because I mean, we have maybe 10 minutes left of the whole webinar, and I'm playing, but the time is going very fast. But in thinking about, and you touched on it a little bit, but why is it so hard for white people to have hard conversations about race and about privilege? And I think somewhere in there, even in being an ally, the fear of making a mistake. And so I don't know if you want to say more about that.
Sure, absolutely. So I think here's one of the things that I think is true, is that in my experience with working with parents over 2 decades, one of the most frustrating things about talking to parents, about having difficult conversations, is about race. And white parents will consistently say to me, I've raised my children not to be racist and not to see color. I've raised them that everybody is equal. That's what we talk about. And that's what we talk about in this family. That is what we believe. That is so not enough It is so not enough. And so the way in which racism and the way in which discrimination happens is so complex, right? Sometimes it's really obvious, but what we were describing before with Shanterra and I in that working situation is really, it's like these little subtle, it's these little things, right? Yeah. Or for example, with Black students who go to the independent schools that Shanterra and I work in, when they're maybe in the minority of of Black students, right? There's international students, there's other students, but they're in the minority by being Black students. And their white friends are saying things, using the N-word and thinking it's funny, which so many kids do, and so many parents will never believe it. Like, my kid's a good kid. They know they should never do that. Right. We raised our family to believe in equality. Which does not translate for young people because we don't have difficult, hard conversations about what we think about these things. And so and one of the things I just want to highlight is, it's hard. And we weren't raised to have hard conversations, but the thing that we need to really think about and what we're seeing, which is amazing, I will say it's really incredible, is that white people up to this point have not shown a lot of curiosity in general about having these hard conversations. We are seeing that now, and I'm really happy about it. But for 2 decades of my doing work in parenting, parents have not wanted to ask themselves hard questions about how to make this better when they don't see, because they're not really seeing how it impacts them. And they don't believe that their children are at all capable of doing things that are racist or sexist or homophobic or whatever. The second thing I think is that schools, even schools that, as I was saying, that are good schools that talk a lot about diversity, that they steer away from the actual complexity and the really complex history of the United States. This is focused on this webinar is focused on the United States, on the history of this country and the systemic oppression that has happened to Black people in banking, in mortgages, in businesses, in loans, in all of the things that would allow Black people to actually be able to build wealth in this country and build, therefore, educational opportunities. They've been systematically denied, or when they got stronger in it, it was systematically taken away. We don't talk about that in the United States history, even in schools that have diversity days. And so I think that's one of the reasons why we really can't deal. And then the third part is that we don't like being uncomfortable. White people don't like dealing with the fact of I can't handle this. And that it feels like we get paralyzed. And one of the questions I would like to ask people is, what do we think is the worst thing? Like, truly, what is I really, really want us to focus on this, is what is the worst thing that would happen to you in a conversation between two people about being racist? And you could hear this and say, I could lose my job, I could this, I could that. So actually, historically, we haven't had a lot of consequence to that. So I just want us to really feel into what is the worst thing. And actually, the worst thing, maybe just to put this out there, is to sit with discomfort and sit with, maybe our ancestors didn't own slaves. My family came over 2 generations ago, but we benefited from the privilege of this system. So it's a hard look at our own privilege and how this looks, and we don't like to do that. But my experience with this is that if we do, things get a lot better. And if we have hard conversations and we make a mistake and say, oh, I made a mistake, I want to reclaim this relationship, I want to move forward in this relationship, the person on the other side works with us. And so that's why I think it's been too easy for us not to have these conversations. And I think that's the reason why. So we need to get beyond sound bites as parents. We need to get beyond sound bites in our businesses. We have to have hard conversations that actually matter. And actually the people who are receiving them are taken seriously. So that's my short answer, but what do you think about that?
I think white people are terribly afraid of being called a racist. And so I'm glad that you asked, what is the worst? I mean, because what's happening is they're so afraid of being called a racist that they won't even come near they won't even come near anything that has to do with race. I have had people who struggle with describing me, And they will go all around. She has red hair, she wears glasses, she, has a beautiful smile. They will say all of that. And then someone, it's like, well, is she black? And I'm like, you can actually say black, you can say African American. And I tell this to students all the time because I've seen young people struggle because their parents have struggled and because their parents have struggled. And so you have kids in 2020 who are, trying to describe me to their parents of like, well, she's really nice and and won't just say she's a black woman. Right. And so I think what we need to do is get away from the fear of mistakes, right? When I go back and think about dignity, I think there is a way to approach hard conversations. And if that intention, like I am treating this person with dignity, like I am here to want to understand, I am here and I may mess up, right? Like I'm here, I don't have all the answers. Even as a black woman, when people ask me questions, I'm quick to say, you know what, I am not sure, but this is what I think, and then I don't speak for all Black people in America. So, don't think that your one conversation with me covers everybody. And it's amazing to me because that only happens with people of color. Like when white people feel that they've had one conversation with one Black person, they solid, they good. That's when we hear, oh, well, I have a Black friend, and so I'm good. Like, and that's not the case. And Black people know we don't have that luxury. We don't have that privilege. We dare not have that privilege, because if we went on the experience of just one Black person, especially interacting with white people, you and I would not be on this Zoom right now. That's if right. I only took the one experience. But for some reason, when people are in a position of power and privilege, they can say, well, I've had that one conversation, or I hired that one Black person at one time at my company. So our entire company is diverse. Right. And so I think that it's hard because this country was set up for you to be able to move seamlessly through it. Right. And so this country was not set up for for white people to ever struggle, to ever have to wonder if they're wrong, to ever have to feel uncomfortable. And so now, though,
Shanterra, I'd like for you to talk about, there's this stereotype of Black women's anger that is actually, and I think that some white people know it, and some white people don't. Like some white people expressly actually know it, right? They know the stereotype, right, of the Black woman anger thing. And then I think it's also a script that a lot of white people know, but they don't realize they know. And if they didn't before reality shows of like Housewives of Atlanta and all that, they do now. And they don't have to have it like actually like realizing it. But there's the stereotype of Black women's anger. And I really would like for you to talk about how that works for you and what's going on in your head in situations that are difficult. And then, and then we can talk about like, what can we do about, how can we support in those moments?
So I have several situations, again, lived experiences that come to mind when I think about how I have to control myself. And I think it's happened in professional settings. Like I remember years ago, I was speaking at a school in Minnesota, and I was the only Black person in the town. I had gone out to eat. I hadn't seen anybody, right? And I had to speak at this school. And that happens quite often. And I just, check in, make sure people know where I am. But I remember after this speech I gave, some students were asking me questions. And the questions were around, well, can I dance? Can I sing? And basically, can I entertain them? Because that's what they have seen on television. And then while answering the question, I felt this person rubbing my hand like this, like trying to basically get the color off my, and I looked down at this child, and it took all of me not to say, what are you doing? Right. And because I'm a professional, because I am the educator, because I'm the adult, right? I had to maintain my decorum, and I had to, and I just looked at her, and then she moved her hand really quickly. I remember getting in the car, and I called Ross. Like I did not call my Black friends. I did not, because I didn't need anybody, getting on a plane trying to come to Minnesota, but I called Ross, and it didn't even cross my mind why I was calling her. I just called Ross and I told her about this experience because I was upset. I was mad at the entire town. I was mad at all the educators at the school. I was mad at the principal. I was mad that there weren't any people that looked like me, that this child was rubbing my hand. And I'm like, am I the first Black person that she's come in contact with? And keep in mind, I was there for a few days, and my entire time there did not see anybody who looked like me. And so I was angry. And that was one of those times where Ross was like, she didn't question the racism of the kid. It was more about the questions. She was like, Shanterra, they're just trying to identify with you. They're trying to connect. They're trying to connect. And I was like, I don't care about them. Mad. I was upset. But I calmed down, still did what I need to do. But I also knew that I had to, that no matter how uncomfortable I was, that I still had to go in with a smile and still had to do the work that I was there to do. Another incident that I think about, I was at like a candle party or oil party or something, and my best friend for life, she was there with me, and I was sitting there filling out paperwork or something, and I felt something in my hair, but I just brushed it off because I thought it was maybe a fly or whatever. And then not even 5 seconds passed, I felt fingers on my scalp. And I turned around, and it was a white woman, a total stranger to me. I did not know her. We did not have a relationship. Oh my gosh, her fingers were within my hair. And my first thought was, I'm about to knock this woman, like, what? And so I said, why are you touching me? And she immediately began to like, oh, and she went into a posture that I had offended her. And not only did she have the posture, but I looked around the room, and my BFF and I were the only 2 Black women in that room. So I did immediate assessment of my safety. And the idea was, I can't get too angry, because if I make this woman any more uncomfortable, my safety is in jeopardy, even though she has violated my entire person. And so I was trying to make it, I feel like my friend and I, we can talk by brains, because she all of a sudden looked around, and I guess because I was loud, because I was like, why are you touching me? But then this white woman's friend came up, because she was so distraught, right? And that's all I said. All I said was, why are you touching me? No other words were exchanged. But she was so distraught. Her friend came up and said she didn't mean anything by it. How, are you kidding me right now? Again, though, I am thinking, do not cause a scene. Do not show too much irritation, because do not show anger. Because if I really respond the way that I want to, and I will say this, but I love Jesus, but if I responded the way that I really wanted to, I knew that my safety was in jeopardy. Not only my safety, my BFF. Even though I was personally violated. So there's a constant thought that even when I'm offended, when I'm violated, when I have been lied on, when I have been mistreated, that I always have to maintain a sense of nice nasty, a sense of professionalism, a sense of knowing that, one, I need to get out of here safely, and that if I don't behave properly, they will use my anger against me.
Mm-hmm. And that is going through your head pretty much in the background, right?
All the time.
All the time.
All the time.
Every professional experience, and do you think it's fair to say that that is something that is, even though every person's experience is their own experience, but do you think it's fair to say that that's a general experience that most Black women experience and have?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I am confident in saying that, even just if I think about my friends, mm-hmm. just from college, from wine club, like they will all be like this, mm-hmm, mm-hmm, yeah. Because it is something that we talk about, because it's something that we know. Right. We know that we have to maintain a certain way because our anger makes us unheard,
Right.
right?
So I want to say before we go to questions, I think the thing that's really important is that as a white woman, you have scripts in your head about how you handle conflict and how you handle when you're angry and responding to other people's anger. We all have it in various different ways of where we were raised, but we all have cultural scripts. And one of the really powerful scripts that women have and white women have is how do they respond to people when they are angry? When people, them expressing anger and then you receiving anger when someone's angry at you. And it is so important. If there was, one thing, I guess, from this webinar that I hope that especially the white women take from this is that we cannot be when we are in a position where we have done something and we find out that we have done something that's racist or ignorant racist or whatever, that our response, you might be legitimately upset. Okay, that's fine. You have the right to your feelings. But you have to be educated to know that you cannot be in a situation where the Black woman has to caretake you because of needing her own safety is absolutely reinforcing the entire problem. And so it's not nice when you do that. It's not kind when you do it. It's like, I'm sorry that your feelings are hurt, but that when we are in that situation, we are contributing to a dynamic that is very powerful. And we, as white women, have the responsibility to know that and to own it and to stop and to be able to say like, whoa, I really messed up. I really messed up and I am so sorry. And, I did something a little while ago where I inadvertently did that. So it's sort of like to an older Black woman, I was in an airport. I had an exchange with her where she basically at the end of it had to say, honey, it's going to be okay. And I went up the escalator and I started feeling this feeling of like, what just happened? And I realized that I had fallen into that. And I swear my entire shame, embarrassment hit me. I wanted to turn around and find this woman. And I couldn't do it. I actually looked and I couldn't find her. But knowing at least I've made this mistake, I'm going to stop. And I'm going to take responsibility as a white person, as a white woman in particular. I'm going to take responsibility for how I was raised to express my anger and to receive anger. And the same, of course, for white men, that if you are in a conversation with a Black woman and you make a mistake, don't be paralyzed. You can get through this. You can get through this by taking a breath and saying, you know what, I might not be very well equipped for this conversation, but I am equipped enough to look at the woman and say, or look at the person and say, I think I really made a mistake. And if I made a mistake, please tell me, because I really can take it. I need to know, I need to do better. We can get past our paralysis. Yeah. So with that, I think we need to go to our questions. So yes, it is time. It is time for our questions. So I'm going to start actually, we're going to start, where is that question? Here we go. So we had a question that I'd like, Shanterra, if you could answer, which is, what would you advise someone to say when faced with a question or situation or comment that they don't yet know how to respond to? So you get a question, you're like, I don't know the answer to this. Someone who wants to be an ally, but just doesn't have the answer and just doesn't know what to say. Is there a way to say this with care and sensitivity?
So part of my my thought is honesty, just being honest and saying, you know what, in order to treat you with dignity, I want to be able to spend some time with this. I don't want to give a rushed answer. I want to honor you. I think so often we're so quick to just give an answer because we feel like we have to, especially if we have, we just feel like we have to. But I am of the mindset where I've done a lot better, especially the past couple of months, of saying to people, you know what, let me think on that. I want to honor your question, but let me think about it.
And so here's another question. Shanterra, you were an assistant principal at a school for a while. So here's the question. I am privileged by being white, male, and holding a position of authority, a principal. I'd love some practical ideas for how I can balance being an ally with my responsibilities. I'm feeling that there doesn't have to be attention, but would love some help with getting clarity so I can move forward.
For me, again, ally is action. So it's often those moments where especially when you're in leadership, like, you know your team. You know your team, you know what's coming ahead, you know the programs that y'all have, you know the students who are there, you know the faculty and staff. You have such a bird's eye view of everything that is going on. However, when it comes to being a person of color who works at the school, a Black woman who works at the school, a Black man who works at the school, being an ally means looking out and recognizing the blind spots. It means having conversations with them, and not that conversation of where you're being extra, where you saw something on the news and you might automatically want to come to the Black person that works at the school and talk about it. That's not allyship. That's like, that's let me practice on you. And I think what people are looking for, especially people of color who work in private or independent schools or public schools, is the fact that they are treated with equality, that you're thinking about the hiring practices, you're thinking about the salaries, you're thinking about the benefits, like all of that is in your mind and action is behind that.
How would they, so talk to me about, because we talked about this the other day, that, you know, you and I were having a conversation about Diversity Day and like going to the Black students or the Black teachers for Diversity Day, but you don't go for it. So talk about that, because I think that's very specific to schools. Well, and for any, just talk about
and
that.
companies do the same. Like, you know, we're working on this.
Not with that.
Yes, like, so, you know, Juneteenth is this weekend, and so I've received, Lord, the companies that sending out so many emails. And so now companies are like, you know, trying to get on the bandwagon the bandwagon of celebrating Juneteenth. And I just have in my mind this image of they have found, you know, have they found the Black person that works there and said, hey, we want to celebrate Juneteenth. What do you think we should do? And that's a great concept. But then when you are celebrating something else, is that same person at the table? You know, working in a school, we brought in speakers. And so if we were having, you know, a speaker for Black History Month, and you want to, you know, make sure that the Black students are pleased. So you bring in the Black students to say, hey, we're bringing in a speaker for Black History Month. What do you think? You know, and especially at a school where students of color are, there's not a lot of them. And so, you know, they're like, it's a yay, great idea. But do you bring those same students to the table when you're bringing in Rosalind Wiseman? Right? Like, are you being consistent? Is it only when you're wanting to celebrate their culture, and then any other time they are not at the table? You don't even get their opinion. They are not heard. And so it's this idea that we can't just be used when it's for a program, but that when it becomes a part of the culture of the school, of the organization, of whatever it is, that it is embedded in what we do and how we move forward. And some of us need to start with, I know we have not done this in the past. Because there will be somebody around the table that's saying, wait, we've never had her in this meeting. We've never had so as the leaders, we need to say, I recognize we have never done this, but we need to move forward. We have messed up. We have to do something different.
And do you think, so, and also one more question before I follow up on this, do you think it's okay? I have said, as a white person in a room with majority white students, minority Black students, I have said, it is exhausting. I always, you know how I always say, like, maybe I'm wrong, but in my experience in education, when there's a minority of students, and they are having to deal with ignorant racist comments that are coming from the other students, it is exhausting to pick every battle because it feels like it's all on their shoulders. And then as the leader and principal of this school, let me explain to you what the principles of this school are and and give examples of that, but to say, because you're sort of speaking for the students in that moment, the students of color. Do you think it's okay for the person in a position of like leadership and also race privilege to be able to say, you know, in my experience with this is what can happen, and it puts a lot of pressure on those minority students or the minority person to speak out in, you know, every battle. So I am saying to you, here's what the principles are. Do you think that is, taking their voice, or do you think it's okay?
I would love it if the person in power and privilege didn't even have to even say that the Black students are exhausted, right? Like that I don't need the white student saying, oh, they're speaking for you because you're tired of talking to us about Black issues. Even though when they're in class and the history lesson is now on, because the only American history that's taught in class is about slavery, not the, you know, the doctors and lawyers and professors that were kidnapped from the continent of Africa. Like, we start with slavery. And so then when you're in class and the, you know, the Black students like, here we go. Someone's gonna say something dumb, because it's just a known fact. But when the leaders, when it's set from the very beginning, this is what we're about. Everyone is going to be treated with, you know, with dignity. Everyone is going to be treated equally. It is not up to anybody else. It's like we're afraid to say I'm in charge. But the lead, it starts from the very top.
Yeah, and I would let me add also, and I think we move on from school, because you and I could do forever. Is that just to say it, which is that, because I still hear this all the time. I mean, literally until like yesterday. Two things. One is, if you're teaching Huckleberry Finn as a white teacher, and you've got a couple Black students or one in your class, do not turn to that one Black student and say, is it, you know, the N-word is here. Do you think is that okay in front of all of your white students? Because that is happening a lot still.
Because the answer is no.
Well, and the answer is no, and well-meaning, well-intentions does not therefore justify incompetence as a teacher. And so being able to say, like, you'd never do that to a student. And we have heard so often that students are being put in this position as like they've got to be the answer to all this. That's the first thing. Second thing is that, you know, school, if you, as a leader of a school, it is so hard that oftentimes what schools will say when they've made mistakes in the past is, that's in the past. And all the communication to parents and student body is, that's in the past, we've moved past it. As a leader,
get over it.
To be able to say, we've had problems in our past, and you know what? We probably have them right now. And to acknowledge that, because what happens when, as a leader, you say it's in the past, but now we're celebrating Diversity Day, or we're doing all these things, or blah, 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 then it creates this thing where students don't believe you, students of color don't believe you, and white students think that they can get away with continuing to do like bad behavior, like laughing at the person of color who comes to speak at the assembly. So which is also a really common thing. So when we do that, we've got to be able to recognize, yeah, it's in the past, and yeah, it's right now. And when we do that, I think we develop a lot more credibility with people than if we just pretend that it's something that we dealt with in the past.
Right.
All right, I want to answer the question of, I've heard from people of color that white allies should not ask them, how are they doing at this time? And so how do you show solidarity with your friends of color at this time? So can you knock that out for us, please?
Y'all, let me. So here is the how are you doing thing. And I don't know, and I say this to my white friends, you know, I don't know who wrote the blog that told all the white people to reach out to their one Black friend and say, how are you doing? Because it's like they all came in on the same day. So somebody send me the link to that blog. And because this is the deal, when you have constant public displays of Black bodies being killed, when that is a constant thing happening, to get a text of how are you doing, I understand that it is coming from a good place. I understand that it is also that condolences, like it is sending condolences. It is, you know, I'm thinking of you, and all of that is well intentioned, I know. But as a Black woman, when I get that and it's over, and part of me wants to say, today is not a good day. But part of me also, I don't want to say anything. I'm not ready to let you in on my grief, right? Like I'm not, it's like, you know, when somebody loses a family member and then the first 2 or 3 days, everybody's there. There's food, you can just walk in the kitchen, there's cakes all on the counter, like there's all these people. Then a week later or so, things are quiet. Month later, things are really quiet. No one's checking in anymore, no one's asking. And when you're in the middle of that grief at the beginning, you're just getting through. But then later, you need somebody to check in. But my fear is when we're getting all of these, how are you doing? I'm so sorry. I'm really more curious about sorry about which part? Like which part? But I honestly don't always feel ready or safe. Safe meaning I'm not clear on my emotions at the moment. And I'm not sure how my words are going to be interpreted. And so it's like, I'm not ready to have that conversation. However, I also worry though, that if I don't respond, if I don't welcome you into my grief at that moment, that I've missed the moment. And that reminds me of my lack of privilege, that if I don't invite this white person into my grief right now, then they may not want to grieve with me or lament with me 2 weeks later. That my lack of privilege means I have to meet you, I have to grieve with you right now. I have to bring you into my grief right now, even though you're going to ask more questions.
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm going to have to process with you. I'm going to have to talk about the foundation of this country when it comes to Black people. I'm going to have to do all the history lesson and then say, and so this is why I'm so angry, because this continues to happen.
So what do you think? Okay, so the white person should say what? I'm thinking of you, don't need to respond? Like, is that okay?
Oh, I got those too.
Okay.
Which is so, I get it again, but I do want the link to the blog.
Or do you want them to not respond and respond a week later because they say, hey, I realize this doesn't end on Friday the Friday the next week, and I'll check in with you later. What is the sentence that helps? And then we have one more question before we have to wrap up.
Okay, I can't, and I keep saying this. Your one interaction with one Black person cannot set the tone for all Black people. I also think that if I say, and I've said, I'm not okay, but thank you for checking in. Like I'm not, and that means you don't have to reply, you don't have to do anything. But I think it's this when everybody is asking, how are you doing? I got a voice message from someone, a white friend of mine who was so sweet. He was basically like, Shanterra, damn. Right. And like, and for me, that was, I heard everything. And that was it. Like, he was like, I was just calling. I don't know what else to say. I don't know what else to do, but I'm just calling.
And you don't, right. And I don't think we need to do in the moment, like first, obviously white people need to educate themselves, and then maybe educating yourselves in the resources that we'll have. And there's tons of resources out there, but we'll have resources too after this, but educating yourself first. And then like after there is, as Shanterra has been saying to me the last couple of weeks, there is no deadline. There is no ending of this. And so educating yourself first, and then it's as parents think sometimes with kids, we have to fix the problem right away. Like Black people have been dealing with this since every moment they've been on this country. Yeah. We cannot, this whole fixing thing, when we want to fix it right away, is more about us. And so we've got to be able to say, like, educate ourselves first, and then we reach out later after when people are leaving or hopefully not. I just so deeply hope that we continue focusing on this. But there's a long line, there's a long amount of time that we've got. So get yourself educated first. Yeah. We have to answer this question. I'm going to do and you see if you want to add. Yes. I want to be part of the movement. I care, I support, but when I try to support, I seem to say the wrong thing and offend. If I say anything suggesting that the effort should include protecting all people, then I'm accused of not understanding, or worse, being racist. I'm frustrated with how to contribute to the solution, and it's important. So I want to answer this question flat out, which is, here's the issue. This is basically what happens as a white person when you say this is a human issue, this is all people issue, is that even if you don't intend this, the way it comes across when you say that is that you are dismissing the experience of the Black person or of Black people's experience in this country. So when we focus on, but it's really a human issue, but the Black experience is what we're talking about right now. And the Black experience is different as a human experience than the white human experience of this country. So when we say human experience, it really comes across as dismissing the pain, the suffering, the experience, the perceptions of Black people when we say this. That's why it's offensive. And so, because it's you're denying the feeling of this person, the experience of that person, by saying it's a human issue. So what I would do instead is, yes, it is a humanity issue. And as humanity, we have to take responsibility for our part to repair. And so part of the repair here is actually to say, I get that this is a human issue, and really I need to stop talking like that, because it's coming across in ways that are really hurtful and painful to the people who are trying to say, but that's not our experience, right? My human experience as a white woman interacting in general with police officers is different than a Black man's experience, human experience interacting with a police officer, or law, right? The system of law in this country is different than mine. And so we can't dismiss it. And that's why it's such a problem. So we can say instead, I just need to listen to your experience and be more educated and informed about that experience. And then I think you're going to get a lot more clear about how you can help and support.
Yeah, I think that was a perfect answer. And when I think about why people want to make it a human issue, it has more to do with their discomfort than the person that they're actually talking to. People struggle with saying Black Lives Matter. Like, it is like a thing of like, oh no, I can't say that. And it is such discomfort behind it. White people need to deal with that discomfort before saying anything else, right? Because we've seen a lot of white people on stages mess up because they have not yet done the work on the inside that needs to be done before they start talking.
So, like, as a conclusion, one of the things that I want to just hone in on is that, if you're in conversation with somebody and it's really uncomfortable, the most important thing is to take a breath and to say, can you tell me more about what, I really want to understand what you said, or I want to understand better what you said. So can you tell me more? When you feel like you've offended somebody, or you feel like you're in that kind of sticky situation, saying that moves you through the conversation more easily. And then I want you to remember that when you're in really tough situations, remembering the dignity of people and separating their actions from what they're saying is going to give you the space. And here's the thing that I always tell teenagers, because they often get into, problematic conversations with authority figures, is showing respect to someone and showing dignity to someone actually looks the same. But in your heart that it's different. And when you separate and the definitions are different in your mind, you're able to show up in that conversation much more easily. And it's much easier to be able to show up in a way that you're proud of in that situation, in a way that you feel self-respect through the process. And those are the things, concrete things of when you're with somebody and it's really hard, you say, I really want to understand this better. Can you tell me more? And then remember that showing dignity and showing respect really looks like the same thing. In conclusion, Shanterra, because we're 2 minutes over, any last words before we conclude?
Y'all, don't get distracted or caught up on the word ally. If you think about if treating people with dignity is at the forefront of your mind, that you will respond, and people will, you will be acting ally-like, if there's not a word. But when white people struggle with, well, how do I act as an ally? If you are looking around and you are seeing people not being treated with dignity, meaning that you would not be treated that way. You would not be talked to that way. That you didn't have to have that conversation with your child before they went out to play basketball. That you did not have to have that conversation with your daughter before. When you leave with dignity, and when you know it, because that is being, if you will, that is being an ally. That's it.
So I'm going to try, and I'm going to say this on this webinar for Shanterra and I to do this again and maybe do more specifics or things based on your questions. Yeah,
because we have so many, and we talk a lot, see?
So we would like to be able to do that and continue the conversation. you are going to be getting from us a resource that is free about how to continue the learning here, and also a resource list as well. And check us out on culturesofdignity.com. Shanterra, do you want to say your marvelous university one more time before we close?
Yes, y'all, if you want to see more, and listen, I haven't updated the blog in a while because, you know, life has been happening. But if you go to marvelousuniversity.com, you can see more about the work that we do. And I'm also on Instagram and Twitter, and I'm not on Snapchat and TikTok. And I'm really trying to avoid both of those because
it's hard.
Yeah. But then can I talk about Hype right now?
If you want to, yeah, sure.
Okay, we have 1 second. Okay, y'all, if you get a moment and you're going to see this in your email, there is a wonderful organization that I would love to support, and it is Hype Freedom School. It is based in Houston, and what they do, and I'm reading this because I want to make sure I get it right. Hype is a literacy program that they give children books that focus on self-esteem, cultural pride, and Black history. Y'all, Hype has been in existence for 20 years, and the work that they are doing is phenomenal. And I would love if you would check them out. And if you can, you know, if you can donate, they are still doing the work even with the pandemic. They just had to pivot and shift the way, but they are making sure that every child reads.
Thank you all so much. And so my question to you all as you leave here is, what is the smallest act of dignity and courage that you can show others, coming from this webinar, to think about what is the smallest act of courage that I can do? What is the way in which I can show dignity to others? When you leave this webinar and for the rest of your day, and think about it in terms of the conversations that this country and so many countries are having, because we are all, the amount of people that are really focused on this is really quite inspiring. So thank you for sharing our space with us, and hopefully we will see you again, and I can get Shanterra to, So thank you, Shanterra, and thank you for everybody.
Thank you, Ross. I love you. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Bye.